This is a Rough Tiger production.
And you, and you, and you, and you were there. Some of it wasn't very nice, but most of it was beautiful.
Hey.
Howdy. I still can't hear you because of what with all the fireworks around my house last week.
Yes, happy 4th. Happy birthday, America. We're gonna go blow some shit up. Yeah. So
Well, it started raining about midnight, so that was
good.
perfect. Just everybody had to go inside. So
dang it.
Thanks for letting us take the week off to celebrate the birthday. I had to grill a lot of hamburgers and hot dogs and not participate, but go and watch a 4th of July parade and do some stuff around the neighborhood. So it was nice to have the day off and chill out. And hope you guys had a good 4th and enjoyed revisiting some of our spectacular American stories there from our library of dream idiocy.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for listening and doing those things for us. If you haven't already, please go on whichever platform you're on and shoot us 5 stars. That helps us a lot, helps us climb the charts. Shoot us a review too, if you don't mind. You can reach out to us, send us an email at dreamidiotspodcast@gmail.com. You can visit us at dreamidiots.com, and then we're on Facebook and Instagram at Dream Idiots. So check us out whenever you would like. And thanks for all your liking and sharing and commenting. We appreciate it.
I am Morris, and the other fellow who just got done talking is Bryan.
Oh, we failed to mention that. Sorry.
We did, yeah. But you have a single update for us this week before we get started with the stories?
I have one update.
Right?
One gratifying update, one fun-filled update from, I think it was 4 weeks ago. I told the story of Cayley Mandadi, who was the Trinity University student, sophomore at Trinity here in San Antonio, communications major, who died tragically in October of 2017. And I told that story 4 weeks ago, episode 68 or 69, I think, one of those two. She was either murdered or died due to her use of MDMA, depending on whose version of events you like. But she died at a very, very young age because her boyfriend at the time basically beat her senseless. Mark Howerton is his name. He went on trial once before back in 2019. He was not acquitted. There was a hung jury in that case. Went back on trial not until about 6 weeks ago because of COVID interfering with things. And in that trial, they did not find Mark guilty of murder, but they did find him guilty of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. So last Friday, there was finally the sentencing hearing. So he was found guilty on that one count. We had no idea how long he might be going away for. In the sentencing hearing, a couple of interesting things happened. There were a couple of details that either I missed in telling the story or were only revealed in this sentencing hearing. I talked about this when I told the story. I couldn't quite figure out why the hell this guy was always in San Antonio without a job and not in school, and he lived in either Houston or Tyler, Texas. I did mention he was a steroid user. Apparently, he was working with a buddy of his that was a Trinity Tiger football player, and they were selling steroids. That's why he was in town, because he was selling steroids as well as using them. So,
and one of our listeners pointed that out too. One of our listeners pointed that out,
right.
Speculated that's what he was doing.
Yes,
so, yeah.
Exactly. So spot on there. I feel bad that I said anything bad about the guy because he's a small business owner. He's creating jobs, right? Isn't that the take? No. And then also in the sentencing hearing, a couple of things quickly. There was another girl that dated him. I realized as I read this, I'm pretty sure this had to have happened after Cayley had died. This young woman who is currently 19 years old said that she dated him very, very, very briefly when she was 15 or 16, which Cayley died in 2017, 6 years ago. So after Cayley's death, he dates this other girl a couple times over the course of like a week. And she gets a couple red flags and goes, okay. And her mother gets a couple red flags and goes, okay, we're steering clear of you. And he loses his shit. And after, seriously 2 dates, 3 dates, whatever, threatens to kill her, loses his damn mind again. The guy's a steroid freak. And then the other interesting thing that I thought was interesting, Cayley's stepfather testifies that you can do, the victim testimonials to the defendant. Cayley's stepfather just lashes out at the defense attorneys that worked very, very hard for him and was pissed off at these attorneys, which I get if you're the victim of a violent crime, why you're just angry at everyone who's not in your corner. It's a little bit silly because in my mind, you want this guy to get as good a defense and as aggressive a defense as humanly possible, because you don't want him to have an appeal based on ineffective counsel down the road and then get off. So
you do not.
Right. And so I get how he's emotional, but he reams out these two attorneys as part of his testimonial, and the attorneys just got up and walked out and refused to listen. Refused to listen to it, which, okay, whatever. But nevertheless, Judge Michael Mears gave Mr. Howerton the max. So he is going to be a guest of, I'm not sure whether Bexar County or the state of Texas or where he goes, but he got the full 20 years for, yeah. The range was 2 to 20 years for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. His weapon in this case were his bare hands. But by virtue of that, the earliest he is eligible for parole is 10 years. He has to serve 10 years, no matter what. So there's not going to be any sort of early release, early furlough, and any of that nonsense. He's there for 10 years at least. And if you read the prosecution sort of take on it, they kind of said, well, maybe this is the right verdict after all, because you can't really have convicted him on the more severe charge, because that charge really has to include intent, that he intended to kill her. Well, maybe he didn't do that, but he certainly caused it. Maybe he wasn't trying to kill her, but nevertheless, Mr. Howerton is going to be a guest of the state of Texas for a good long while. So that's a gratifying thing, and thank God.
I guess he'll be residing up in Huntsville.
I would think so, but I'm not really sure.
I guess. Well, that's a bit of good news for everybody, I think, except him.
Yeah.
But, hey.
Yeah, we should. Hopefully he will soon be the involved in some non-consensual sex here real soon.
Well,
we can only hope.
It looks like the judge came through. I mean, that's best we can hope for in the situation, and set it up to where this kind of behavior is monitored and doesn't happen again on college campuses, because it's just it's an awful story, and we want to say at least justice has been done, but there's no amount of justice that can reconcile this. But 20 years is a start.
Yeah.
So
yes, that will help, and hopefully he'll not harm anyone else. So bye, Mark.
Absolutely.
Right.
Goodbye.
We'll send you an inflatable donut just in case you need it.
Damn, Brian.
Yeah, I don't care. This guy can rot in hell. No sympathy. So from that, we shift gears into what I wanted to talk about this week, and that is dreams and the meaning behind dreams. Been thinking about this recently. I've had during the course of my life several dreams at various points that were illustrative, helpful, interesting, and I started doing some research into what people think they mean. Psychology is definitely one of those. It's a soft science. It's pretty subjective. I feel confident you have some strong thoughts on this, and probably have some interesting dreams from your life that were interesting, helpful, whatever. Yes.
Horrifying. Yes.
Horrifying. Right. So, I'm not going to dive too deeply into, Sigmund Freud, and of course thinks that everything that you dream about or think about is due to some latent desire to do something, to have some sort of niche fetish, whatever. All those things were related to sex, or a lot of them a lot of it is. But he also suggested that dreams help protect people, protect you from waking up too early, from when sight or light or sound disrupt you. I think that he also thinks that they were helpful in manifesting. I mean, the American dream is is not an actual dream, obviously, but is a manifestation of someone's goals or hopes or things for the future. So he didn't necessarily think your sleeping brain was all about your latent desires, but the manifest dream simplifies, organizes, but sometimes may also mask, repress things that are going on in your mind. Carl Jung kind of takes a slightly different tack, excuse me. And he focused on different archetypes or patterns that appear symbolically in dreams, and he theorized that dreams could help explain daily events and help you work out the balance of various aspects of your life. But there's also a whole bunch of other theories that are, frankly, well, they're theories. They're subjective. They're much more fuzzy around the edge. There's a guy named Calvin Hall, a psychologist, who feels very strongly that dreams have to do with your cognition, and they reflect elements of daily life. But also when you're dreaming, your brain is resetting. You're downloading short-term memories and mapping them to the part of your brain that retains long-term memory. And so some of these folks think that dreams are just your brain having fun. Almost, really, it's this free form almost exercise that can only be done when the conscious brain is set aside. But obviously all of this is again, completely subjective, but it certainly does play a large role in cognitive processes, how you process and store, and they're then able to recall memory. It helps with the emotion regulation. Dreams can be incredibly vivid, but unless you're someone who is actively engaged in the practice of journaling about your dreams, very often dreams are really, really hard to remember beyond 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And so based on that, I wanted to kind of dive into some of the dreams that I didn't know, the fact that many of these dreams are common across people. And a couple of these I always thought I was sort of weird for having, but it turns out they are incredibly common. So first one, dreams about being chased. Again, extremely common, where it's a stress-induced scenario where someone or something that you can sometimes see or maybe not see is following you, and there is some sort of pursuit. Who knows what this means, but it could be the fallout of having had a stressful or daunting experience of having been attacked. And that's just your brain processing that fear. Another very common one, dreams about falling. This is not one I have. I don't have a fear of heights at all. I would assume there'd be maybe more of a correlation, but people that dream about falling apparently are more likely to have aspects of their life that are unstable or insecure for some reason, and that then is expressed in their dream. Job insecurity, relationship insecurity, and then falling is the ultimate expression of not being safe. Another one, dreams about being naked, or at least partially naked. I do have this one occasionally. One of my just repeated stress dreams, weirdly, is I'm trying to get from point A to point B, catching a flight, meeting someone, taking some item to someone. And when I'm presented with this task, at first glance it appears that it's simple. I'm walking 10 feet, and then but when I'm handed the item to take this other person, suddenly there is a 6-lane freeway and a waterfall and a chasm and all these fucking obstacles that just pop up in the dream. Like, oh god damn it! I thought I was doing something simple, and now it's impossible. But as I'm doing that, I've several times have had that the stress of I'm trying to get from point A to point B, and oh yeah, by the way, I'm also naked or half naked, and I've had that. Oh god, I'm naked. Well, I can't do anything about that right now. I have no clothes, so I'm dealing with this shit first, and then I'm dealing with the fact that I'm naked. Another one, this one's common. Dreams about flying. I've had this a ton during the course of my life. Growing up, there was one convenience store right by my house I used to always go to, and I had a recurring dream of going there, buying, there's like a little candy that was sold on the counter at this Circle K in San Antonio that said flying pills. You take a pill and suddenly you could fly around for like 30 seconds, but it would stop. So you could zip around. You had to be back on the ground in 30 seconds. Otherwise you would fall from some hideous height and bash your face in. Then you take another pill and start flying again. So bizarre, but I had that dream consistently. People do dream kind of broadly about death, either their death or just death in general, witnessing a death. Some of these can be, I'm sure, this is not an area where I've dreamt about at all, which is kind of weird. Some psychologists think that these dreams are maybe even a positive sign. If they're not about you, it may be the death of a prior version of a relationship that you had with that person, and so it's not about death, a literal death, and it's more about reinvention of a relationship. I'm like, okay, yeah. maybe so. Another common one that I've never had, and I suspect you've never had before. People dream about being pregnant. Well, I have never dreamt about being pregnant. So I'll skip that one. Dreams about water. I love the water. I love swimming. I love deep water. So I find water. I mean, water is cool, deep, but I always think water. In my mind, water is safe. And so if you have dreams about being in clear water, apparently that means you have clarity about your life, your needs, your next steps, your what have you. But if the water is clear or muddy, less so. And that kind of makes sense. Dreams about food. I like food. I don't dream about food. Maybe I mean, people that are like hardcore foodies, maybe they dream about food. But I think this is a straight 1-to-1 correlation. People that are really, really into fill in the blank will dream about eating fill in the blank. But yeah, that's not one of mine. So recurring dreams. There are several dreams that I have that are recurring. I may have told you this offline. After I told the story on this podcast about when my father died. For the year after that, I had the constant recurring dream of him walking ahead of me on Congress Avenue in Austin. He's 30, 50, within sight of me, but suddenly Congress Avenue in Austin has the pedestrian traffic of Manhattan. There's just a slew of people walking. And I can see the back of his head walking away from me, and I'm trying to catch up to him, but I can't with all these other folks. And then I'm able to see him turn a corner, but then when I get to the corner and turn as well, he's vanished. I had that dream over and over and over and over and over again. So much so that a couple times when it happened, I recognized the dream and forced myself to wake up because I didn't want to have the dream again. So I was so sick. I was so sick of it. Like, yeah, I know. Yeah, it's fairly straight, easily correlated dream there.
I get it. Subconscious. Stop it.
Right. Yeah. Fuck off. Right. Next one, dreams about animals. So I don't dream about animals in general. Sometimes people think that if you have animals in your dreams, an animal is less about the creature itself and more about those behavioral traits. And so if a dog could be loyal, a snake could be conniving, etc. So that's what it means. An owl is very observant, and so there is some thought that that's what that means. I absolutely do have this one: dreams about taking tests. Less so.
Oh God, yes, yeah.
Less so recently, but I would swear I had maybe thinking about sort of prepping for an SAT or something. But I know I had dreams where I was thinking about just, it not only not understanding the question, having questions that didn't correlate with the answer sheets. Like it was a true false question, but the options were A, B, C, or D. And like, no, I'm just being so completely screwed, seemingly screwed. That was a constant one. But happily, those days are long gone. Next one, dreams about infidelity. Not really one I've ever had. But next one is an area where I've had several times dreams where you can't move. I've had several things where I'm kind of in this enveloped in this blackness a little bit, where I can see a little bit, but I can't quite see beyond sort of my reach. But the second I'm, standing with my arms at my sides, but the second I try to move my hands, there is very clearly my hands are being held in place and I can't move them to reach out to turn on a light or to grope around at all. So but it's never scary. It's just sort of weird. I wish there was more light and I could see where I'm, see what's around me. But I've had that many times where I'm constrained. And that this, according to this site, means that there is I'm emotionally trapped or have fears related to the future, or that you have a lack of control, or it could just be your brain having fun. I don't know.
Fun.
Yeah. I've had versions of this as well. Dreams, well, kind of dreams where you can't speak. I do have dreams where I am witnessing myself, and I know I can see lips moving, but I can't hear what's being said. That has happened to me many times. Where like
those dreams for me end with me waking up screaming. Seriously, I'm trying so hard to say something, and it will. I mean, that usually ends with the next thing I hear is, "Are you all right?" And it's my wife. So
okay, right.
Clearly, I'm not, because I'm yelling myself awake. So.
Dreams about a celebrity. I've never dreamt about a celebrity as far as I can recall, but
No.
Someone you whatever admire or lust after or whatever. Like, no, I've never, no one comes to mind. Dreams about showing up late. That is, I mean, that's sort of like the one we're not really being chased, but there's always, constantly I have the stress dream of trying to get to, from point A to point B, and a comical series of things pop up to, impede me, and that's just a stress dream.
Why is the Grand Canyon here?
Right.
When did the Grand Canyon move here?
Right. I could have sworn this was in Arizona. Why is it here now? Right. But I do frequently take melatonin to help me sleep. And then someone pointed out to me recently, well, yeah, that's fine and good, but understand that your body only makes like 1 to 2 milligrams of melatonin a day. And I was taking 10 milligrams.
Ooh.
Like, is that too much? That's probably too much. And then whenever I take 10 milligrams, I would sleep like the dead, but also invariably have crazy ass stress dreams. Like, okay, yeah, I need to stop doing that. The other one that is also common, if you Google this, it's on several different lists, and I've done this my entire life, and that is dreaming about spitting out your own teeth, which I always thought was
all the time.
Really?
Number one dream I had, yes.
Okay.
If it's not my own teeth, if it's not my own teeth, it's staples, thumbtacks. All of a sudden, I'm just disgorging all of this inappropriate stuff, toothpicks, all kinds of random sharp razor blades, just all this random stuff is coming out of me, but it always starts with teeth. Yeah, that's awful. And it's more teeth that can possibly fit in my mouth. Too.
Yes, it's right.
Hundreds and hundreds of teeth.
Right. You've taken a ladle of niblet corn, only it's not niblet corn. It's your actual teeth. Yeah.
One of the many reasons I don't like niblet corn. Yes, it's just too much like teeth. Yeah, it's gross.
Right,
yeah,
right.
And now I'm itching. You can see what you've done to me. Now I'm doing that thing where I just itch when something gross is.
So that apparently means you have self-esteem issues regarding your appearance. Okay, or maybe you just, I don't know. I don't really give much credence to any of this, so whatever. Anyway, just a little summary and diving into this area because I thought it was interesting. In my little story next week, I'm going to be talking about a guy who was sort of an acolyte of Freud, who really dove more into the sexual dysfunction side of people's lives, and he had some really strong feelings about it. So we'll dive into his work next week.
The only time that animals show up in my dreams, it's either horses or dogs I've known who have died. And so like Hans, remember Hans, my dog I had in high school, he will come to me in my dreams and we'll play for a while. It's pretty cool, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Or Millie, my last Great Dane who passed away last summer, she'll come to me and we'll hang out in the dream. So those are nice. Or it's a horse that my grandfather had when I was a kid. So those aren't bad at all. And then the flying dreams, I don't really fly. Maybe because it's a weight or self-esteem issue. I just kind of hover a few inches off the ground and float around that way. So
levitate.
Yeah, levitate and that kind of thing. But definitely, and I've had some really weird dreams that just get really super like detailed with just all kinds of weird science fiction elements. And
oh, really?
I don't know what causes that. Yeah, that's just some weird shit, man. Weird shit, man. Fascinating, Brian. Thank you. That's
cool stuff.
Except the teeth part. That just
Woo. Yeah, I was blown away. Apparently that's like half of society has that dream. Like, oh wow, okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was just me.
No. That's a horrible one. Yeah. And they just keep coming out of your mouth too. They just keep pouring out of your
fire hose of teeth.
Yeah.
Makes my skin crawl just thinking about it.
Yep.
Okay, there you go. The history of dream analysis.
And does this lead into a curse word of the week?
Yes. Here you go.
It's time for the Dream Idiot's curse word of the week.
Curse word is you may have heard about this. It got a little bit of news. The word is Hambriston. Hambriston. Hambriston.
It's when a mohel shows up for circumcision with artificial ham in your town. I have no idea.
So Hambriston is Hambriston, Texas. Well, it turns out Hambriston, Texas doesn't actually exist, but as a testimony to what a genuinely terrible human being the Texas governor is, Greg Abbott, he tweeted this I guess last week at this point. He shared a tweet online, liking the fact that Texans had reportedly booed Garth Brooks at one of his recent concerts because Brooks has apparently made some political statements recently about the whole Bud Light, Dylan Mulvaney nonsense. And so Abbott tweeted his, about Garth being woke and, is in favor of Garth being booed. It turns out this concert didn't actually even exist. And the name of the town didn't exist, and the festival didn't even exist. It was completely made up. Someone made up this. Someone posted online that Garth Brooks had been booed off the stage at the 123rd annual Texas Country Jamboree in Hambriston, and good old Greg passed it on as fact, and he liked it. It turns out it was all just horseshit, but still really, really funny that he was duped into thinking it was news.
Well, all but the governor's got friends in the low places. Am I right? What a jackass.
Yes, truly.
Hambriston. What if the cost of living is in Hambriston?
It's real low.
You ready for my story, Brian?
Go. I'm ready.
It's funny that you mentioned Freud because we're returning to the human potential this week, Brian.
Oh, nice. Good. Great.
If you recall, we first examined the human potential movement in episode 59. And I'm not going to recap the whole thing, but I'm just going to say we looked at how a third force in psychology emerged in order to address the need for individual-based therapy. This was a move away from your Freudian psychoanalysis that you just talked about, or behaviorism, as seen in the works of B.F. Skinner. This attempt in a third force was called humanistic psychology and focused on an individual's lived experience and personal history, much in the way we might analyze dreams. Like, well, what happened today? Because that's what I tell my sons when we talk about dreams, is like, personally, I believe that dreams are just your way of your brain clearing out the cobwebs,
moving the garbage out, right?
Move the garbage out of what happened during the day. The best known name associated with humanistic psychology is Abraham Maslow. We talked about, he's the psychologist whose eponymic hierarchy of needs helped to define the concept of self-actualization, which was important to the human potential movement. And that whole idea is that once the basic needs are met, humans can focus on higher endeavors. Once we have food, clothing, shelter, water, we can become loved in a society, we can form a family and societal bonds, and eventually work our way to some kind of human perfection and self-actualization. Now, we should not confuse the human potential movement with humanistic psychology. In the words of Todd Gitlin, and he's a writer you've probably come across at one point or another, from his book, The 60s, he saw the human potential movement as a, quote, and this is a long one, but it's a good one, melange of encounter groups, therapies, and mystical disciplines, which promise to uncover authentic selves, to help people live in the present, get in touch with their feelings, and give themselves permission. It held promises of relief for besieged individuals burdened by obligations, promises of intimate in relations for those who had lost the hope of God or community, promises of self-expression for the culture, transcendentalism for organizational age. This tangle of therapists' spiritual and physical practices had spun outward from its hub at the Esalen Institute. So if humanistic psychology can be seen as the theoretical launching point for the human potential movement, then the geographic launching point was indeed the Esalen Institute. You ever heard of the Esalen Institute before?
Only very, very broadly. I don't. I'm light on the details.
Okay. Located on California State Route 1, or just Highway 1 in Big Sur, California,
Okay.
The Institute was founded in 1962 by Dick Price and Michael Murphy. Not that Michael Murphy, not the country singer. The two men met when Price stopped by Murphy's residence near Golden Gate Park in San Francisco. A former professor of both men, a religious scholar named Frederick Spiegelberg, had suggested that Price visit Murphy as they had much in common in their shared interest in meditation and Oriental religion. They had also, strangely enough, 8 years prior, been in the class of 1952 at Stanford together. Though unaware of each other, they had both been psychology majors. After graduation, Price continued his studies at Harvard, while Michael Murphy traveled afield first via the draft. Michael Murphy had been born into a well-known and wealthy family of the Bay Area, but that did not excuse him from service in the Army. Murphy spent 2 whole years stationed in Puerto Rico, and this is how they used his psychology degree. He interviewed draftees there because the Puerto Ricans are U.S. citizens.
Right, sure.
They had to, they were eligible for the draft just like everybody else. He had to interview draftees there in order to determine, quote, if they were faking it or not when they failed their intake exams to join the Army. He did that for 2 years.
Faking injuries, faking maladies that would prevent service.
Malingering, all those things that they accuse people of to get into the service.
Right.
Yeah. After his service, he returned to Stanford in hopes of pursuing a PhD, but in philosophy, not in psychology. But he found the mid-century turn towards, quote, more science, more rigor, more measurement of behavior instead of abstract speculation about inner meaning. He found that very disappointing. After 2 years of chasing his tail here, instead he went to India and applied to an ashram, where he studied and meditated for 16 months. He found the devotion to the ashram's founder, Aurobindo, who had died in 1950, to be cult-like. He had admired Aurobindo, found him to be one of the great thinkers of the 20th century, but he found the followers there, their desire to, quote, surrender their ability to think for themselves, disturbing. In his view, Aurobindo encouraged an openness in thinking and new ideas, not some codified dogma. So here he found disappointment as well.
Mm-hmm.
He returned to California, back to the Bay Area, where he played lots of golf, he meditated, he worked as a bellhop, He wrote a novel called Golf in the Kingdom about a magical golf course. This is when he changed his name to Ty Webb and joined the Bushwood Country Club, where he hung out with Judge Smales, Al Cervic, Dr. Beeper, and Danny Noonan. That's a Caddyshack reference. He did not do any of those things, but it certainly sounds like the backstory to Chevy Chase's character in Caddyshack, right? He's doing all of this stuff. He loves playing golf, but he's kind of a golf bum, working as a bellhop, doing all these things in the Bay Area. He finally moved to the home of an Aurobindo follower, which was basically kind of a junior version of an ashram, where he could live, meditate, and meet other like-minded individuals. It was here that Dick Price walked through the door in 1960. Dick Price's story, his journey, like Murphy, from the Stanford Psychology Department of 1952 to that house at the edge of Golden Gate Park, was also erratic. Hold on to your seatbelt here, Bryan. This is a good one. His first year in Harvard graduate program ended with an examination paper where he, quote, criticized the psychology of the program itself. You can imagine how that was taken. It was the only time he received a grade other than an A. He received a C. This was and is an unacceptable grade in graduate school. Getting a C in graduate school is tantamount to getting an F.
Right.
So he left Harvard, where he was essentially found unacceptable for the program at that time. He returned to California, spent a great deal of time and effort considering graduate work at Berkeley before enlisting in the Air Force, where he had heard a psychologist might find good standing. He did not really find a job as a psychologist, but he did find a job as a teacher in the Air Force. Not quite sure what he was teaching, but he found a teaching post at Parks Air Force Base east of San Francisco, which he seemed to enjoy. But it wasn't until he was placed on night duty that his life really changed. He was able to fit classes at Stanford into his schedule, and he studied with Frederick Spiegelberg, that religious studies professor I mentioned earlier. He also attended lectures by Alan Watts, who merged Zen Buddhism with elements of Western psychology. Watts espoused the works of Frederick Perls, Wilhelm Reich, and Price absorbed all of it. And the beat movement's use of Zen philosophy in such authors' works as Jack Kerouac, Allen Ginsberg, and Gary Snyder. Of those three, I'm most familiar with Gary Snyder. Did a lot of environmental poetry and writing, did Gary Snyder. Price began to practice meditation. He also got married to a very nice woman named Bonnie. He brimmed with ideas and energy. His time was divided between his home life with Bonnie, his ostensible teaching job with the Air Force, the Academy of Asian Studies, where he practiced meditation, and kicking around the North Beach scene. He fit all of this into his schedule because he only slept 2 hours a night.
That's not good for you.
No, in my wildest days, I slept more than that in college. That is amazing. One night in a North Beach drinking establishment, Price finally crashed and burned. The night ended with his arrest and confinement in a military hospital. His confinement there lasted 3 months, and he underwent a regimen of Thorazine and electroshock therapy. He also lived through the, quote, vivid experience of seeing his own past lives. Now, I don't know if he did this or not, but essentially what we're talking about is some kind of nervous breakdown, right? I mean, the dude was going at it fast and hard, suffering from what I think they would probably call back then nervous exhaustion. I'm not trying to downplay any insight he might have gained at this time, but clearly he was burning things at every end possible. I mean, if you're sleeping 2 hours a night, that is not good for you. He was honorably discharged from the Air Force, but he was transferred to a hospital in Illinois for a while, which was pretty good for a little bit because both of his family and Bonnie's families lived in the Chicago area. This lasted a short while, and then he was committed to a 3-month stay at a private clinic in Connecticut called the Institute for Living, which is a name that should horrify you because it horrifies me. The Institute for Living. It was technically a voluntary stay, so he, after 1 week, left. As soon as he walked out the door, his father had him involuntarily committed. He was diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic. This is when things get pretty horrific for him. He spent a year there. After that year, he left, and listen to this, he left with 59 insulin shock treatments. I didn't even know this was a form of any kind of psychotherapy. Insulin shock. Have you heard of that? I'd never heard of that.
I mean,
I don't even know how that would work.
Well, I know. I mean, I've known enough people who are diabetic that, I'm talking out of my ass here, but obviously, the whole fighting with diabetes, and I know that for some patients that can be a tenuous battle of maintaining blood sugar, and you can die from improper maintenance of that if you become whatever. But it sounds, I mean, based on the term,
I don't think he's diabetic.
No, it sounds like they're inducing something that would be certainly
they're injecting him with insulin. That's
right.
what they're doing.
I mean, that would have to be a near-death experience, right? I mean, because your body just can't process that shit if you're not right.
So he's after a year, he left with 59 insulin shock treatments. So that's more than one a week.
Right.
10 traditional electroshock treatments. So that's almost one a month. And he also packed on an extra 30 pounds.
Oh, nice.
His parents, while he was in there, his parents had his marriage to Bonnie annulled during his confinement. And he accepted all of this with just passive resistance. He just kind of gave up while he was in there. Upon release, he returned to Illinois and worked for his uncle, who owned a company that manufactured beer signs. He led this existence until the spring of 1960, when he boarded a plane to California, moved away from his parents, and, quote, a very dull life. He reconnected in the Bay Area with an old religion professor of his, Frederick Spiegelberg, who said, you really need to meet Michael Murphy. And he set him on course there to meet him at that house near Golden Gate Park. Okay. So that brings us up to date, the two men meeting in 1960. Sure. Murphy and Price spent a year or so discussing their mutual ideas about religion, philosophy, psychology, meditation, when they figured a road trip was in order. In the spring of 1961, they decided to visit Slate's Hot Springs in Big Sur, with permission of Murphy's grandmother and family matriarch, Bunny Murphy. Owned by the Murphy family since 1910, the property had hot springs near it. Beautiful pools which overlooked the Pacific Ocean. I just love the thought of that. Just sitting in a hot spring, looking out into the Pacific Ocean. There was a restaurant, a bar, cabins available for rent, and the large family home known as, quote, the Big House, available for Murphy family visits. Price and Murphy planned on living in the Big House, working at Slate's Hot Springs, and spending any spare time reading and meditating and discussing new ideas. The first night there, the two men headed for the Big House. Price settled in a guest room, while Murphy, in an odd moment of ownership, took the master bedroom. Murphy did not sleep well that first night. He was awakened by a flashlight shining in his face. A large figure stood over him, yelling, "Who the hell are you guys? What are you doing here?" It was the rather angry and dedicated night watchman, whom Bunny Murphy had failed to notify about her grandson's impending stay. He was armed with only a billy club that night, which was fortunate because he had a rather large handgun in his quarters in another wing of the Big House. This intense young man was an aspiring writer working on his first novel. He dreamt of being, quote, as popular as Henry Miller. He was tall, lanky, and just a wee bit paranoid. Bryan, do you want to guess the night watchman's name?
Well, it couldn't be Ernest Hemingway. I don't know.
The tall, lanky, and wee bit paranoid night watchman's name was your friend and mine, Hunter S. Thompson. A watchman was necessary, as after dark, the hot springs could be a dangerous place. Thompson himself had been jumped and beaten severely one evening. The baths were a haven for young gay men out from San Francisco for the evening, but the Big Sur heavies, a group of motorcyclists, brawlers, and drug dealers, also prowled the highways of the Big Sur. Fights often broke out in the bar, the parking lot, and even the baths. It was in this increasingly violent atmosphere that Price and Murphy had their vision of a new hot springs, a place of learning and enrichment, of meditation and expansion. Quote, their programs would be open and flexible, not welded to any particular school or discipline. They would establish a center for the exploration of new ideas. The guiding principle would be one of synthesis, the flowing together of East and West, the ancient and the modern, science and religion, scholarship, and art. Michael Murphy persisted with this vision, and eventually his family came around to the idea. The desire to quell the ongoing violence no doubt played some part. Murphy's father, seemingly happy that his eldest son had finally found a path in life, convinced Bunny Murphy to hand over the reins of Slate's hot spring to her grandson. Using connections in both the worlds of religion and science, Price and Murphy gained insight and support. Price handled the upkeep of the grounds and the day-to-day workings, while Murphy worked on a program of speakers and workshops, although there was some overlap between their duties because they were partners. By January of 62, the first seminars were held at what would become the Esalen Institute, although that name would not be formalized until 1964. The name was derived for a native tribe called the Esalen, spelled differently, Esselen, and the Institute is spelled Esalen. A native tribe called the Esalen that had used the springs since long before white settlers inhabited that part of California. Late one night in the summer of 1962, not long after Price and Murphy had launched their endeavor, a middle-aged couple appeared at the Slate's hot spring front desk. They'd been traveling the Pacific Coast Highway and were searching for accommodations. The travelers had literally no idea where they were. They had gotten lost among the dark, curving roads, and fatigue had taken its toll. They were in dire need of rest. The desk clerk, for whom English was a second language, was in no mood for a late-night arrival, let alone ones who had stumbled there quite by accident. His demeanor changed, however, when he saw the names written on the guest book. Abraham and Bertha Maslow. We'll take a look at how Maslow and others created the programs and how these personalities affected the early years of the Esalen Institute in part 2 next time. So this is part 1 of 2. I'll talk about Maslow and a guy named Pearls and another fella who led some of the early programs in what would be called encounter groups as we continue to explore the human potential movement in Esalen part 2 next time.
Nice. Yeah, that's very cool. I swear to God, folks that are listening, Morris and I do not tell each other beforehand what the topics are. But the person that I was going to talk about originally this week, and I decided to defer till next week and talk about diving into dreams first, is a name you have already mentioned. You mentioned it in your presentation just now. You mentioned the person I'll be talking about next week. So, in passing.
All right. I think I know who it is. I think I know who it is. So cool. Okay.
That's bizarre.
Synchronicity, baby. Synchronicity.
Right. Dude. Big sir.
Oh, things get wacky out at the Esalen Institute in the next installment.
Oh, I can only, so yeah, 60s in California. Yeah, I can only imagine. Free love and LSD and Timothy Leary and yeah, all kinds of good things.
And Hunter S. Thompson wandering around with a flashlight and a handgun.
No. Also known as Paul F. Tompkins.
I almost said Paul. Your friend and mine, Paul F. Tompkins.
No, not Paul F. Tompkins.
So Hunter S. Thompson and Michael Martin Murphy are wandering around California with Dick York from Bewitched.
And Kenny Loggins. Like, wait, who?
Because he loves a rainy night. No, wait, that's Eddie Rabbit. All right, folks.
Nice. Yeah, very cool.
There we go from the depths of the inner mind to the periphery of the California coast. Another episode of Dream Idiots is in the can. So
yeah, absolutely. Thanks for listening. And if you don't mind, go online, please shoot us a review, shoot us a 5-star, and reach out to us. DreamIdiotspodcast@gmail.com. Check out dreamidiots.com. And Instagram and Facebook is Dream Idiots as well. Drop us a line. You got a story for us to deal with down the road? We'll happily take some suggestions. Give a curse word. Just want to say hi. Just want to give us input. Anything at all it's all happily accepted. We appreciate it. So thanks a lot for doing all that stuff for us.
Tell us your dreams, your hopes, your desires, what you thinking about. But thanks for the emails and the questions and comments. We do appreciate it.
All right. Bye.
And be good to each other.
This is a Rough Tiger production.
Bong bong.
Mm-hmm.
Brian.
Bong bong?
Bong bong.
Bong bong. Good.